when we talk about emerging trends and emerging technology and emerging industries, I guess in the context of this evening's discussion, it's really important that as a business owner, you've got a sense of where this is all going. I was just having a discussion with Dheeren before, and unfortunately, it's very easy for us to highlight where businesses have felt secure before and were very quickly displaced because they didn't track where technology trends were going. And I think the obvious one that most of us of a certain age would be familiar with how big Kodak was. And that now as a brand is gone, mainly because of their inability to embrace what was happening in digital camera technology. And then there's some that felt that they were completely blindsided, such as the taxi industry when Uber came along. But then as an observer, you sit back and think, well, it was really ready for disruption. Yeah, you guys weren't really, moving and changing with the times, but unfortunately they couldn't brace that digital change that really made Uber what it was. So yeah, a number of companies there that we can sort of highlight of the need to really follow what's going on and get a sense of what it's going to mean for your business moving forward. And of course, the biggest change that we saw was the move to the internet going back in the 90s. Many of the companies that didn't embrace that side were very quickly gone. But the next big move that we're moving into now is some of these newer technologies. So you'll hear these terms thrown around. They've become, I guess, buzzwords to use in conversation. Pretty much any startup, they go through like a dartboard and pick out the buzzwords to put into their pitch. So you'll hear things like blockchain and AI and machine learning and all these different terms thrown around. But as a business owner, it's almost impossible to work out, well, what does that mean for me? So we thought on tonight's session, what we'll try and do is break down some of these technologies so you can have a look at what they're all about, maybe go beyond just the simple description and definition and actually look at the application within business and what it means and what you might be able to do with that. The reason why that is so important is obviously with COVID and what's been happening. Often we look at technology as being a disruptor, and they very much ease their way into the market because it takes a while for things to change. What we're finding with COVID is there's been a universal disruption. So a lot of these technologies are getting adopted very quickly through this current stage. So as we move out of COVID and into this new normal, we're actually going to be sort of rubbing our eyes walking out to a new world because a lot of these technologies have actually started to come through and really quickly adopted throughout this time. So really, really important timing to have this chat. So as I mentioned at the start, I'm fortunate enough tonight to be joined by two special guests. PD and I will be doing a deep dive in on some of the technology as we move forward. But we were lucky enough tonight to be able to capture a small amount of time with Dheeren. So Dheeren, thank you and welcome. Just for context, for those of you who don't know Dheeren, Dheeren was actually one of the speakers at our TEDx Casey event, which is where I first met Dheeren. Very quickly, I jokingly identified with him as my spirit animal because I could listen to Dheeren talk all day about technology and his role as what are you now? You're Director of Innovation?
Oh, Head of Innovations, yeah, at Capgemini.
Head of Innovation, terrific. So Head of Innovation at Capgemini, and obviously a role there where he sees a lot of technology and what's happening out there in the market. So asked Dheeren to pop along, and Dheeren said it was his. It's your son's birthday tonight.
Yeah.
But he's managed to jump online just to join us at the start to just share some of the stuff that he's seeing along the way. So Dheeren, thank you very much for coming along. Can you maybe just share with the guys in your role there at Capgemini, what it is that you do, and then maybe some of those trends that you're seeing coming through?
Yeah. Absolutely, Chris, and it's always glad to come and talk, meet the innovation crowd folk. It would have been better in a pub, obviously. We'll wait for that to happen. So my role, Chris, with innovation, it's usually frontier tech, emerging technologies, but then we work in areas where these technologies are actually at a state where we can actually apply them. So it's applied innovations more than R&D type innovation. We do sort of touch every now and then with Horizon 3 concepts. Like we are closely following what's happening in the quantum world, right? We know quantum computing can help us with financial crime or anti-money laundering, but that's very, very out there. It's we're not doing any prototypes or any experiments as such. There's a bit of awareness happening. But what's really sort of mainstream for us, sort of right in the middle of the room for us, is artificial intelligence. You touched on AI, you touched on ML, Chris. We've definitely moved. So we're using AI across all our sectors and all our industries. So I work cross sector. So we work with retail, telco, financial services, public services, everything in between. AI is now sort of applied across the board. We used to use a lot of automation kind of use cases with AI. So what can we automate? What can we make things go faster? Where can we cut down? Where can we have efficiency gains kind of thinking? We're now moving into more predictive sort of areas. And automation, we're saying automation is default. We're just absolutely using AI for everything automation related. We're sort of getting into that whole predictive areas. The audience may find it useful just to see what's happening. A couple of things within that AI umbrella. You may have heard things like low code and no code. It's not very specific to AI, but generally, this is a general software. It's just sort of happening in the software world. We are moving to platforms. Oops. I can hear some music playing in the background.
So just double checking, has everyone got their microphone on mute?
I don't, but I'm not playing music. I'll put it on mute.
That's right. Well, I'll switch it on. Can you still hear it playing, Dheeren?
Yeah, I'm back. It's better now. Is it okay? All right. Yeah, I'll keep going. So I was talking about low code and no code platforms, right? So what these essentially mean is, firstly, we have this massive talent shortage in at least our sector. I think it's across all areas. We do not have skilled. We are not able to meet the demands of skilled developers, technologists. With border closing and all of that, it's just amplified. So therefore, there's a massive adoption of platforms like what I'm about to explain. So basically, no code, low code. There are platforms out there that doesn't require you to have to know all the technical depth to implement powerful things like AI. It's always been there, but these platforms have now come to a massive maturity. I don't know if you've seen platforms like Create ML, Apple's Create ML. You could basically drag and drop and build a recommendation engine or an image recognition system or a language processing system. You look at Google's Auto ML, you can identify images and classify text, and all kinds of basic AI capabilities are now available in these platforms. And it's just a matter of stitching them together and applying them into your business. So not just AI, it's across the board. Amazon's Honeycode is a platform where the promise there is it's a drag and drop mobile app developer or a web app developer platform. So that's our clients are asking for these platforms, not because they do not have the skills to do it. They do not have enough skills to set up large teams anymore. So we are adopting these platforms rapidly. And I guess even for small businesses, it's something to sort of keep a tab on and explore. Another concept is, this concept around AI at the edge. I'm sure many people would be familiar. We're pushing AI decision making and AI processing closer to where the data lives. So this could be, this is very sort of applicable in healthcare and manufacturing and automotive sort of industries. We've deployed a lot of IoT devices in the past. There's billions of these devices actually at play right now. And then we've got things like 5G. We've got things like massive computing power on a small chip. So all of this is enabling us to go closer to where the data source is and process data and make business decisions right at the edge. So that's the whole concept of edge AI. You may have seen, I mean, now if you use your iPhone, I don't have to send data to a cloud to process and to make a decision. There's a lot of capabilities on my phone to make those decisions, whether it is image recognition or face recognition or whatever it is, even translation. Can all of that happen on the edge is what I'm trying to explain. And you'd see acquisitions. Apple acquired a company called XNOR AI, which basically promises that low power machine learning kind of a platform on the edge. So there's lots happening there in the AI space, Chris. There's other things like ML ops, and I don't want to get into the technicalities, but basically, if you were in the software space, there were things like DevOps, which was basically a bunch of tools and techniques and automation and workflows which sort of managed your development activities. That's now coming to machine learning. So we call that ML ops. So that developers can now focus on the business problem and not worry about how these models are deployed and how they're monitored, how they're tuned and calibrated. Lots of platforms sort of emerging there, and that's sort of mainstream. This is like broad areas for us in our space. And the other, I might just pause here perhaps for questions or discussions, but another area is what you again touched on, is that whole blockchain. Now, blockchain is more than cryptocurrencies or the currency aspect. Yes, there is the currency aspect, and then there's this whole concepts around NFTs and tokens and token economy that we are creating. And I think it's fascinating as a subject, as a topic, but it's full of opportunities. It's creating new business models. And, if anyone's interested, we could touch on business models like fractionalized ownership. You can break big assets into really, really small things and own pieces of it, or liquidate pieces of it, or invest or borrow pieces of it, or lend pieces of it. Like this could be my house broken into 10,000 pieces as tokens, and I could do so much more. I could do all the things that I could do with my house. I could use it as a collateral, and so on. So anyway, I'll stop. I'll just pause. I can sort of get into the blockchain discussions if you feel like, but let me test the temperature.
I think, and as I said, I could listen to you talk all night, Dheeren. But maybe just quickly, we've got a question here. Please touch base on the affordability of incorporating AI into an individual setup, specifically for a startup business. So, I mean, in terms of cost, like is it one of those things of how long is a piece of string, or how do you sort of approach that affordability piece for small business and startups?
Yeah, I think there's sort of three levels of utilizing AI, right? For any business. The first one is go get yourself a packaged AI service and pay by the month and use it. You don't have to worry about anything. It's all packaged and you're paying a few dollars a month and you're using the service. The downside, you don't know what's inside this black box. Your data goes there. You can't train it. It doesn't recognize your specific, let's say, image recognition. It doesn't recognize very specific machine parts that's relevant to your business, but it just recognizes a whole bunch of general things. So if that's your starting point, and those are not expensive at all, we've got lots of players in the market. The next step is perhaps to use something like an AutoML platform, where you have a little more freedom. You train a model, you deploy it onto your own piece of the server. And that's going to get expensive, but then you get a little more control. And then the full-blown thing is to set up your own AI development environments and hire highly skilled AI people. That's for the enterprise, and they do that for a reason. There's privacy reasons, there's security reasons. So my advice, Chris, generally to people starting off with AI adoption is there's a lot of these services out there that does the basic thing. You can get started on the journey very quickly with very little resource. And then you see, is AI the center of your technology architecture? Maybe not. It's just one of the things it does. Your center of it could be something else. So I guess, yeah, you've got to sort of gauge. And
Jenny, I just noticed you put your hand up.
Yes. I feel like I'm way out of my depth here. First of all, I'm not too sure what ML is that you're mentioning, but I also don't understand how this actually would apply to my business. I'm not saying it won't apply to other small businesses, but I'd be interested to know how would this apply to, well, first of all, what is ML?
Yeah. Sorry, Jenny. I should have clarified that. So machine learning is the new. ML is machine learning, and it's basically we had the old computers. you programmed it to do something and it did that. And the new computers, the new age of computing is you tell the computer what to do and it doesn't use it sort of learns as it goes and does things hopefully, better than where it started. So it's got some kind of a feedback mechanism. It says, did that wrong. I'm going to do that better next time. So that's the whole, ML is machine learning. And it's becoming mainstream, Jenny.
We'll actually be all the detail on that.
Sorry, Chris.
As we move forward.
Sorry, Chris, you broke there a little bit.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. No, sorry, I was just saying, Jenny, we're actually going to be deep diving in on one of those topics as we move forward. So we'll give you a better understanding of what that means. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Not a problem. Yeah. I have another question here as well, and I'm keen to probe you on tokens and just your thinking around some of that space of what's happening in crypto. But just got another question here that came through. Sharing some links with the group chat of the black box versions that you were talking about before. So might actually chase that up afterwards. And Dheeren, maybe ask if you're able to send that through to me. I'll send an email to the guys with all the links on there. Yeah, we'll get that across.
Yeah, 100%, Chris. Yeah.
Yep. Bodine also made the tongue-in-cheek observation that AI at the moment is probably more I being intuitive as opposed to intelligence. Sort of obviously in that evolution stage of where it's all at right now.
Yeah, that's right.
And Louis asked, I guess, a good segue question here, just saying NFTs is something that I'm interested in as a designer. So can you maybe just touch on that NFT, token space and what that sort of looks like?
No, I'll let you guys deep dive into it later in the session, but I'll sort of give the overarch, the top level, conversation starters, if you like. So if you look at blockchain, it's got that currency part to it, which is where it all started, which is where the biggest of the use cases are happening and happened in the past. So it's got a really close sort of relation with that currency space. And then you've got NFT and token and everything else. And Lewis, generative art, remind me to, just remind me these words when I'll have to talk about it. And then you've got all these new business models around fractionalized ownership. So if I can spend a few minutes on currency, the currency aspect. We all know what cryptocurrency is. We know Bitcoins. We know there's a whole raft of stable coins and, there's new coins and things coming. But what's starting to happen is there's a concept of decentralized finance that's starting to emerge. It's called DeFi for short, DEFI. You can Google it. You have to read about it. It's fantastic. It's basically what the blockchain has enabled is it says, it's so powerful as a technology. It's so perfect as an engineered system. I was telling Chris, this is the first time we are engineering economics. Otherwise, engineering and economics were two separate topics. They were taught in different schools. you never went to an economics school and studied engineering. You never went to engineering, and nobody said, how do we engineer the finance system, right? So now blockchain is the one that sort of connects all of that. Decentralized finance basically says you don't need a centralized financial entity to any of the financial services, whether it's to lend money, it's to buy asset, it is to invest, whatever the case may be. Get a credit card, buy a cup of coffee, whatever it is. You don't need a financial system. And there's a lot of use cases and platforms that's coming and enabling this. And then comes the currency itself. We know the current currency system, the fiat currency system itself is an expensive. It's an expensive system. You've got to, let's say you print the money, you assign denominations, you distribute it, you put it in a truck, take it to the ATM, deposit there, and somebody takes that money and uses it. It's a very expensive supply chain. If you look at it. Digital currency, just to digitize them, you can have these tokens that are issued to you by the Reserve Bank of Australia, let's say. It can do so much more. It's so much more efficient. It is so much more resource efficient and all of that. But it's also programmable. You could program a $10 currency to do many different things, as opposed to just serving one purpose of it being a $10 note. Yeah. So I would sort of advise to go and read a few things about on these topics. Now, the digital currency, the central bank issued digital currency, many countries are already adopting it. I've had 3 meetings this week alone, talking to one of our big 4 banks. We're talking to Reserve Bank of Australia and Singapore's Ministry of Finance. We are actually experimenting a digital currency. So we could have a digital equivalent of a dollar. I don't know when, but we're already experimenting technology. So this is coming, whether we like it or not. This is not cryptocurrency. This is the digital version of a dollar. So what it means is, firstly, the whole cryptocurrency said, hey, we don't need a bank to do all of this. And suddenly the bank said, oh, yes, this thing is taken off. We're late to the party. We better get back into this, and said, OK, we also can bring in a digital version of it, and it's got the same efficiencies. So there's lots happening there, and digital currency will become a thing. And big techs are the ones that are in the middle of this, which means big techs will come into the space of consumer finance. So your next loan could be a Google loan as opposed to a bank loan. We're not too far from that, and you saw that with buy now, pay later platforms, Afterpays, and we're already cashless. We're already just using our phones anyway. Well, Apple Pays and Google Android Pays and stuff. So it's very close to doing that shift into digital tokenized currency, and these tokens can have. I'll stop myself. I won't go too deep into the digital currency. Then comes this whole NFT, and Lewis, I think the art world is what is embracing this, and sort of really there's endless use cases within the art world for NFT. So NFT, for people who don't know, NFT is basically a cryptographic token that represents something unique. So it is a piece of software that sort of guarantees that something's unique. Yeah? It is not interchangeable like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is fungible. It can, you can change one currency to another and to another. These are non-fungible. You cannot. It just represents an individual characteristics of something, and that's what sets them apart. So if it's a Van Gogh painting and it's designed a digital, let's call it a digital certificate. There's only one of it. There's only one of that particular painting, and it's unique, and that's why it holds the value. So it can become a store of value. So there's, we tend to collect and attach significance to various objects as a society, as humans. So obviously the whole digital collectibles is an area where NFT is starting to play. We're trying to make digital collectibles, and this can be physically backed collectibles. So I can have a bottle of wine that I've purchased that's in my cellar, but I have a digital certificate as an NFT on the blockchain, and therefore, this wine belongs to me. And when I pass this on to Chris, I give both the physical product and the digital, the proof of ownership to Chris. But you may have seen, Lewis and others, sometimes you don't even have to have any physical objects. CryptoPunks or CryptoKitties, they don't exist in the real world. They exist somewhere in the metaverse, and there's all kinds of gaming. And for the gamers in the room, they're already buying digital stuff, skins and all kinds of spaceships and other things that you don't need. So that's the space where it is. But I think it's also coming into the enterprise world. With NFTs, software licensing can be more traceable. Identity management can be more traceable. I can manage my supply chain better with NFTs. So it's got so many use cases, even in the enterprise and the commercial world, as opposed to just art. And I'll finish off with one last thing, and I'll stop for questions and discussion, is the fractionalized economy that we keep talking about, or the fractionalized ownership. So if I could take an asset like my house and I can break it down to 1,000 tokens, distribute those tokens on a blockchain, and I don't know, 1,000 people agree that this house will be sold after 5 years on a particular date, and whatever capital gains is distributed to all of us. And any rental yield that we get every month is also distributed to the token holders. So now we can 1,000 people can get together and buy a house. Now, could we do this now without blockchain? Yes, of course. That's what the concept of shares and stocks are. Why aren't we doing it? It's too expensive. You'll have 1,000 legal contracts, the legal fees and the transfer. Why is blockchain making it possible? It costs a few dollars to do this transaction, literally. Like for $10, you could set this whole thing up, right? In terms of, I'm just making the number, but for a very nominal fee, this transaction could happen, autonomously. So that's going to come into play, and it can go to everything, from Beyonce coins to Rihanna coins to whatever. Everything will be tokenized, from Qantas my Qantas airport lounge rewards can be tokenized, and I could be a token holder. I'll stop.
Dheeren, no, but that probably leads into one of the questions that we got asked around the just the the supercomputing requirement behind some of these cryptos. How does that mitigate that sort of practical monetary advantage of the technology? Does that sort of marry up at all in terms of the way that we're trying to reconcile this opportunity?
Yeah, look. There's a lot of things in the market. They talk about cryptocurrencies being a very energy inefficient solution. The amount of value that a cryptocurrency sort of provides for what it consumes, it's negligible. Like you put on a piece of paper, it's a dot you can't even see, right? So basically, how would you otherwise hold value? You would hold it in gold, yeah? So what is the value to, let's say I had $1 million worth of gold, I'm holding my value in gold, and I have to, I don't know, I want to transfer this to my, I want to take it back and transfer this to my parents in India. How much energy, how much resources do I need to carry $1 million worth of gold and cross the border and sell it or whatever and give this to my parents, right? If you think about that, the value that this brings back into the system, it's the most efficient way. And by the way, I'll take Bitcoin. I'll just talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin can be mined anyway. Today, you can't, I could sit at the edge of the earth and mine Bitcoin where there is enough wind or enough whatever resources. Today, we are not using these resources, these energy resources, because you cannot transport them more than 1,000 kilometers. That's the law of physics. You can't transport energy more than 1,000 kilometers. Therefore, we don't go to the edge of the earth. Hey, Bitcoin can be mined in the cheapest of the energy resources. I can go sit under a volcanic mountain and set up an energy system, and we can mine. And the whole financial system can run off that thing. It's not tied to a location. So there's so many arguments, Lewis. I'm not the expert in that whole energy thing, but it's a very efficient. So if you put apples to apples, the amount of time it takes to print $1 to attach a denomination and use it to transact, or an Apple phone to go and buy a coffee, we're spending a lot of energy doing that. So put it in perspective, it's.
Dheeren, I'm going to be the voice of your son and say, what about my birthday? Yeah, and let you go. But just two very quick questions before you leave. Not that I'm going to ask you to speculate, and we do have the disclaimer of not financial advice, but Bodine just sort of asked the question that do you think the value of Bitcoin will actually skyrocket when they start to phase out cash?
Yeah, look, I won't comment on the Bitcoin value rising. That will become my speculation or my advice. But think about it. The purest form of store of value is gold today. That's gold standard. Yeah, that's the thing. But gold, the supply of gold is not guaranteed. Yes, it's hard to reintroduce more gold into the system, but if I incentivize enough miners, they can mine more gold. Yeah, or we could have an asteroid that lands in somewhere on the planet, brings a lot of gold, lots of supply. The value of gold could go down. Okay. So what's the next best thing? I'm not even going to talk about the dollar and the real estate markets, because the dollar is depreciating 7% year on year anyway. It's a depreciating asset anyway. If you look at it, there's more supply. Don't quote me on these numbers. 30% of the US dollar in the market was produced in the last 2 years. So we're just increasing supply of the dollar, by the way. So that's a depreciating asset. And real estate is sort of pegged back to the dollar. So that is also, so if my real estate is appreciating by 10%, I need to take off 7% firstly, because the dollar it's pegged against is losing value. So if it's gold is the closest way, and even gold does not have a guarantee of limited supply. Bitcoin guarantees you 21 million coins, nothing more. You can absolutely never do it. You can break it down. You can fractionalize. Each of these coins could be broken down into another million units. You can fractionalize it. You can never. So any asset that has adoption, that people are starting to like, any asset, could be a painting, could be a coin, could be anything, and that asset is becoming more rare and more scarce, has to go up in value. I'll leave you on with that.
And look, I got the sense that we could literally have a session just on cryptocurrency without even going into the other tech at all. And that maybe is something for a future session as well that we look at. with the big disclaimer saying not financial advice. Hey, just very quickly before you go, Dheeren, one last question, only if you can promise to keep it under 2 minutes to answer. I know in some of the notes and the like that you send through, you've got a very interesting comment that kind of says that smartphones will be a thing of the past. Are you able just to touch on that view just very quickly before we leave?
That's more sort of my personal sort of observation. The reason I'm saying smartphones will be a thing of the past is, firstly, because smartphone sales have declined in the COVID period. That's because we can't meet the supply. There's supply chain disruptions and all kinds of stuff. We're starting to get used to buying a new phone quickly. Yeah, that's what we've done the last 2 years. If you take the average in this room, we've not jumped in and bought our next new phone. And to be honest, every time a new phone version is announced, whether it's an Apple or an Android version, the features are not exciting anymore. We've sort of hit the roof, right? Hey, how more? I've got like 4 cameras. I might get, I don't know, 5 more cameras. So what? So we're coming to a point where these features are not exciting us anymore. And we're getting used to not buying the new phone every year. So I think the next step from there is smartware. It could be the lens, the HoloLens already picking steam. It's the Oculus and things like that. And Apple's glasses are going to come. So I think it's going to be a whole bunch of other smart accessories that's going to augment so the smartphone could be, it sort of hit the smartness is what I'm saying. There'll be other things that comes on the fringe. That was my sort of thinking when I said that comment, Chris.
Fantastic. Dheeren, thank you very much. I really do appreciate you joining us this evening to share your insights there. I think everyone got some great value, but as I said, I'm sure you probably prompted a whole bunch of crypto questions off the back of all of that as well. But we'll answer all those later. Any we didn't get to, I'm sure we will have time to have a chat about later. So, right. Dheeren, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming and look forward to catching up with you again very soon in person.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. It's a pleasure. Bye.
Yeah. Yes, super lucky to have Dheeren jump on to share that. Again, he's across all of this from the point of view of that very high level of looking at where it sits within the market and sort of embracing a lot of these providers and enablers that are sitting underneath. We're also fortunate too to be joined by PD Silva this evening. And what I thought I'd do with PD is, I guess, pick out some of these key ones that we were talking about as far as emerging trends, and have a look at a discussion around what they actually are and what they could mean for business, and some of those applications. So just a very quick kind of intro to PD. PD is the Chief Operating Officer at Asia Pacific Tech. He is a local boy who migrated to Casey from Sri Lanka in 2007, a graduate of Deakin University and an emerging technology enthusiast, but he's also the father of 2 beautiful daughters and one all-round hell of a guy. So PD, thank you very much for joining us. Really do appreciate you taking time this evening.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yes, and my fingers are crossed that my connection stays stable enough to be able to follow this discussion through and chat on a few of these. But so what I thought we might do in terms of a format is just pick out some of those key ones that we might talk to a bit more. Again, there's an opportunity there for you guys to type in any questions, and I'm happy to be steered by those questions as well. So if you feel that you need to get into another discussion, let me know. But first and foremost, I thought a good place to start might be just sharing a very quick video on blockchain. Now, when I say quick video, I want to highlight, I don't like inviting people to a workshop and just playing videos. So I'm trying to find the shortest ones that I possibly can, but the ones also that give the best kind of insight. So I'm just going to play a very quick video here that just talks about what blockchain is, and then I'm just going to have a quick conversation with PD to talk through a little bit more detail.
When you vote, have you ever wondered whether your ballot is actually counted? If you meet someone online, how do you know they're who they say they are? When you buy coffee that's labeled fair trade, what makes you so certain of its origin? To be sure, really sure, about any of those questions, you'd need a system where records could be stored, facts could be verified by anyone, and security is guaranteed. That way, no one could cheat the system by editing records, because everyone using the system would be watching. Systems like this are on the horizon, and the software that powers them is called a blockchain. Blockchains store information across a network of personal computers, making them not just decentralized, but distributed. This means no central company or person owns the system, yet everyone can use it and help run it. This is important because it means it's difficult for any one person to take down the network or corrupt it. The people who run the system use their computer to hold bundles of records submitted by others, known as blocks, in a chronological chain. The blockchain uses a form of math called cryptography to ensure that records can't be counterfeited or changed by anyone else. You've probably heard of the blockchain's first killer app, a form of digital cash called Bitcoin that you can send to anyone, even a complete stranger. Bitcoin is different from credit cards, PayPal, or other ways to send money because there isn't a bank or financial middleman involved. Instead, people from all over the world help move the digital money by validating others' Bitcoin transactions with their personal computers, earning a small fee in the process. Bitcoin uses the blockchain by tracking records of ownership over this digital cash, so only one person can be the owner at a time and the cash can't be spent twice, like counterfeit money in the physical world can. But Bitcoin is just the beginning for blockchains. In the future, blockchains that manage and verify online data could enable us to launch companies that are entirely run by algorithms, making self-driving cars safer, help us protect our online identities, and even track the billions of devices on the Internet of Things. These innovations will change our lives forever, and it's all just beginning. To learn more about the urgent future of the blockchain, please visit iftf.org/blockchainfutureslab.
Yay, my connection stayed stable. Sorry, I have autoplay on my YouTube. PD, beyond the crypto conversation that we've been having tonight, and it seems whenever you talk blockchain, the very first thing that people talk about is crypto. But I guess on your side, you're working with businesses across technology strategy and how to use some of these things. So what do you see as really some of those key applications with blockchain beyond crypto?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think let's get into understand why blockchain, right? Like, what's so special about it? Let's think this white paper as a normal computer, like a centralized system, right? So there are two systems in the world. One is centralized and the other one is decentralized. So when we talk about blockchain, we talk about decentralized system. So in a centralized system, if I put something like record something, so just say 10 apples, right? So, and if a bad actor, it could be an internet employee or it could be a bad actor you find on the cyberspace, right? And if he wants to come to change this, all he has to do is hack one system and change it. It's very easy, right? And if you have actually used like, shared folders, shared like, Google Sheets or Google, what do you call that, Excels, right? It's very easy for someone to like, change something, if there's multiple line items. And it's really hard to work it out if there was even a change to start with in the first place. So that's one of the biggest problem in the centralized kind of like a system. So there's this one single point of failure. So eliminate that. That's where the decentralized systems came in. So when you talk about decentralized system, Chris, it's not when I record something like this on my computer, it also connects to the network of other computers, like thousands of them, and it kind of like duplicate the same thing what you've written there, right? So if a bad actor want to do some sort of change, not only he has to change my computer and everyone in that network of computers. For example, when I wrote this Apple 100, it'll write on Chris's computer, it'll run on Paul's, Louis, Borden's, and everyone else in the system as well, right? So someone change it to say, okay, Apple 101. The moment it try to do that, then it's kind of chain, kind of like a react, say, hey, everyone else has it. What do you call these nodes will work it out that that's not the true value here. So straight away it's easy to work it out. So that's why the decentralized kind of like a systems becoming a thing in the future. From what I see, all the future enterprise and the government databases will be built upon some shape of blockchain. Again, I think where we are today with the blockchain is similar to where we were probably in 2010 with the cloud computing. At that time, we had to convince people, oh, why should you go to the cloud, right? So one of the key selling points at that point was, hey, you're going to reduce cost. So similar to that, even though that's one of the cases, but as you know, the going to the cloud not only reduce the cost, but it increase the collaborativeness, and it can access information from anywhere. There's so much features like that enabled through moving to cloud. So similar to the that in the blockchain world, yes, the being able to immutable, which is what it means is once the information there, it's hard to manipulate. Traceability, security are the key features of the blockchain will lead people to adopt this technology. There'll be far more greater benefits will come through, what you mentioned, cryptocurrencies. There's concept like NFTs and DAOs, which is called decentralized autonomous organizations. Then smart contracts, one of the key attributes as well. So this is one of the a starting point of another revolution. So that's how I see it. Any questions there, Chris? So there's a few questions coming asking who controls.
Yeah, no, there's a couple that have popped up. One that I probably wouldn't mind taking a deep dive on in relation to blockchain in healthcare and medical records. But a question, actually, surprisingly, you'd think it's commonly known, but it's an interesting question in terms of who controls the blockchain. So can the blockchain rules just be rewritten and changed at any time? Is there we talk about decentralized, but is there somebody sitting in a chair kind of just waiting for the moment to hit the button and change all the rules on us with blockchain?
Well, unfortunately, no. So for example, centralized system, once it's architect, it's impossible for someone to one person to change it unless you have the mass consensus over the 55% of the ability. Then again, earlier when we first started about the blockchain, one of the key problems that we experience is everyone wants to own a blockchain, right? So when the companies came to us to we're building they want to, rather than using existing blockchain platform, they want to create one and they want to own it, right? So just like that, so there'll be opportunity for the private blockchains for those people, and there's a public blockchain opportunities. But there is no, if you're talking about a public blockchain, there's no one person who has the authority to change the dynamics once you set it up.
And Bodine, in answer to your question of who created it, you're opening up a can of worms there for discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of history-wise, I think even going back to the 80s, there was this talk around digital timestamp, which really sort of started this whole idea around a block that would hold information that was like a unique identifier, which has sort of become hashes that get sort of attached to that block, and then that unique identifier links it up with other blocks, so ownership is secure and it's time-stamped and it knows where it's following. When I say can of worms and where that conversation goes, blockchain really came into prominence of Satoshi and Bitcoin, and then you start saying, well, who was Satoshi? And nobody actually knows. And then we go down the whole did man ever go to the moon, and this is a pandemic conversation. So I'm going to try and avoid that tonight because that could last for hours on end. But the reality is, I think the platform itself, the design of blockchain, being a secure system, I guess it leads into your question, Windia, that you've asked in regards to the application in medical records, and I'll throw this to you, PD, but just sort of making an observation on my side. Some of the startups that I'm talking with in the healthcare space are looking at lots of different applications. One being talked about right now is sort of the idea that effectively your health records almost become an NFT, which Dheeren touched on earlier. So the idea that your health records may be an NFT that you could effectively trust the information, track the information, share that with trusted sources as well, and sit that on a blockchain network that allows it to be secure traceable and controllable in terms of using the asset and accessing that asset. And that's just sort of one example when we talk about, what can blockchain do? Not dissimilar to the way that we manage health records right now, but in a system that's a lot more efficient in terms of sharing that information, and a lot more open to security concerns. PD, have you got any thoughts there in terms of blockchain within healthcare?
Yeah, correct. What you mentioned in there, Chris, in the current system, there is a centralized authority who controls it, like, who to share it and all that information, right? But if you go into a kind of blockchain model, what will happen is you will be the party who is giving that access. Like, for example, if a doctor wants to access your health report, for something to do with your surgery in your leg, then you can only limit for him to see the history of something related to that, nothing to do with your mental health or anything like that, right? So you kind of control it, like, and it's a consent-driven kind of an environment. But unfortunately, the current system in Australia we have is a central system. But hopefully, with the new laws, new trends coming, government will look into these kind of things. So the user, the person who owns this data, can control who he's sharing with, what information he's sharing with. I think that will come similar to the identity part as well, Chris. Again, if you go to a bar at the moment, right, what they ask is for your driver's license. All they want to know is are you over 18 years of old? They didn't not want to know your what do you call the place of you live, or nor do the license numbers, because I haven't been to a club for a very long time, but a few years back when I went to it, they even took a scanned copy of my driver's license, right? So that's kind of really worried me, thinking I'm not sure what sort of security framework they follow, or what actions they're taking to safeguard my identity. But that's a recipe for disaster. So we are hoping this blockchain will come into play and help us with these kind of problems we are experiencing. I know that New South Wales government is trying this TDIF framework to overcome these kind of digital identity issues. It's just like every technology, we have to test it out. We have to experiment to find out what works us better. So we are hopeful that the blockchain will bring us some solution in relation to the owning our health care data and also the identity in the online space.
Nice. I think just to close out, because I want to make sure we visit some of this other really exciting check as well. But I guess to close out that piece, I think the other side to look at when we talk about healthcare is not just sort of data records and that piece, but also remembering that blockchain itself is just a more secure and efficient way of managing assets. And so the same way we used to have ledgers for different kind of information and records, even stuff like intellectual property and patents and the like within that sort of health space will potentially all sit within the blockchain itself. So it's just a better way of storing information, sharing information in the most effective way possible that allows it to be more secure. And that can be both tangible assets and intangible assets. So tangible thing being things like a house, a car, cash, obviously, and finance or land, and then intangible sort of being those areas around anything as far as sort of branding piece. I noted recently that the NBA is selling off clips as NFTs, so people can actually buy copyrighted ownership of the Michael Jordan dunk that was made famous through Nike Air. So we're just really getting into this area now around what blockchain is, but it's one worth watching as a business, because effectively securely storing assets and entering into a network that allows you to share those assets is kind of where that will go. So worth watching that space, and we can touch on any other questions as we move forward. PD, was there anything else that you sort of wanted to add to that?
Yeah, can I touch base on one more thing? Especially we have small businesses here, and as you know, that sustainable sourcing is kind of new trend happening around the world. There's this concept called farm to fork through the digital blockchain, right? So I will tell you some story. A few years ago, that World Wildlife Foundation wanted to promote the traceability and the transparency in the fishing industry in Fiji. especially in relation to the yellow fin tuna. So how they did that was the people who wanted to participate in this experiment, they fitted with IoT sensors in their boats. So the World Wildlife Foundation, WWF, know like areas that these guys go, because not every area within the sea allowed to catch this yellowfin fish, because some areas need to be left alone for the regeneration kind of thing. So that can be tracked throughout the journey. Like if they went there for fishing, and when they caught the fish, the fish has to be in a particular temperature, I don't know, 50 Celsius degrees or whatever, right? So in their cold rooms, they have sensors to make sure that it kind of matches that, and they had to come back to the shore within a certain period of time to keep the freshness. So as an end consumer, when you're consuming this fish, you should be, you were able to looking at the, there could be a barcode or something, a QR code or something, they can scan it and they can track the whole, from the farm to fork concept, right? That add values in the supply chain kind of thing. So that can be done for even Australia as well. When we're sending wine to China, right? As you know, in the Chinese market, there are so many non-Australian wines with Australian labels on, that kind of thing. So how can we safeguard our produce when you're exporting it? There's a solution out there that we should be exploring. And as a small business, if you care about what you call sustainable sourcing, I think blockchain and IoT and NFT, that could be can play a key role there.
Beautiful. Okay, machine learning. And Dheeren kind of touched on this at a very high level again, but I feel this is one that is definitely worth unpacking a little bit more, because it's one that sort of, we're seeing a lot of companies embracing this now already, as opposed to blockchain, which is more of a next long strategy. AI and machine learning is really coming into its own now. So I thought what I might do, just to frame the conversation so we're on the same page, I'm going to share another quick video with you, again, under 2 minutes, but just ensures that we're all on the same page as to what machine learning actually means. So bear with me.
Our ability to learn and get better at tasks through experience is part of being human. When we're born, we know almost nothing and can do almost nothing for ourselves. But soon, we're learning and becoming more capable every day. Computer science to enable computers to learn how to do a given task without being programmed to do so. Just as your brain uses experience to improve at a task, so can computers. Say you need a computer that can tell the difference between a picture of a dog and a picture of a cat. You could begin by feeding it images and telling it, this one's a dog, that one's a cat. A computer programmed to learn will seek statistical patterns within the data that will enable it to recognise a cat or a dog in the future. It might figure out on its own that cats have shorter noses and that dogs come in a larger variety of sizes, and then represent that information numerically, organising it in space. But, crucially, it's the computer, not the programmer, that identifies those patterns and establishes the algorithm by which future data will be sorted. One example of a simple yet highly effective algorithm is to find the optimal line separating cats from dogs. When the computer sees a new picture, it checks which side of the line it falls on and then says either cat or dog. But of course there can be mistakes. The more data the computer receives, the more finely tuned its algorithm becomes, and the more accurate it can be in its predictions. Machine learning is already widely applied. It's the technology behind facial recognition, text and speech recognition, spam filters on your inbox, online shopping or viewing recommendations, credit card fraud detection, and so much more. At the University of Oxford, machine learning researchers are combining statistics and computer science to build algorithms that can solve more complex problems more efficiently, using less computing power. From medical diagnoses to social media, the potential of machine learning to transform our world is truly mind-blowing. To find out more about machine learning, visit oxfordsparks.ox.ac.uk, follow us on Twitter and find us on Facebook.
Now, PD, it's almost impossible to have a conversation about AI and machine learning without people getting this image in their head of Terminator and Skynet and all these intelligent machines that are going to take us over one day. So in the context of business and not within the world of sci-fi, what are the opportunities within this sort of machine learning space that are worth looking at?
I love those sci-fi movies, and I think it's good that those guys made those movies before actually AI came through, because at least we know when things go wrong, what could lead to, right? So we have to be careful with the information we are feeding for the computers for sure. Again, like, you know, before I touch base on AI and machine learning, when I said AI is artificial intelligence, ML is machine learning, there's another concept called statistical modeling, right? So I need to bring all these three together. So the best way I can explain all these three is think about your bank account transaction for the last 3 months. So someone going through your transaction, working it out, okay, you spent $1,000 on grocery last 3 months. You spent like, you know, $500 on entertainment. You spent $100 on, you know, fast food like KFC. So that is statistical modeling. So you kind of like, you know, going through the transaction and categorizing these transactions to different pools. That is statistical modeling. But machine learning comes into play. Not only to categorize it, it also look up maybe things like, okay, on Wednesday you have ordered fast food. If your calendar is blocked, if the weather is not that great, the chances of, you know, the probability of, you know, you are ordering fast food is 90%, looking at the probably last 2 years of the data, right? So that's machine learning, not only just a kind of like a categorizing, but being also able to like predict what are the probability of things happening. And the AI comes into play. So it knows, like, you know, you spend this much of money on a particular 3 months and the probability is 90%. And if the AI is available, what it should be able to do is they should be able to order that food through the Uber Eats or whatever. So you will actually get the KFC to your home on Wednesday evening when they know that your calendar is full, that you didn't have time to, like, you know, do anything else, and the weather is pretty bad on that day. Like, I think it's a winter afternoon or something. So it knows that, you know, that's the right choices to do. So that is the three concept. Look at that way. And most of these, when you're looking at the Terminator or whatever, they predict the artificial intelligence level called artificial super intelligence. That's way, so the intelligence is way more than the human's intelligence, which we are far from at this stage. Most of the artificial intelligence currently we are experiencing is called artificial narrow intelligence. And if you're thinking of like, you know, if you ever want to be go on like a self-driving car or things like that. So the machine learning AI will be played a huge role. So the advances of those technologies will play a huge role. The big companies, of course, like, you know, Google use it for, like, you know, for the predictive analysis. Facebook uses the deepfake analysis to work it out. So anywhere, like, you know, your image appears on the internet, the Facebook has a better chance of recognizing if that you or not than anyone in the human's brain can do. Even like if you think about Amazon Go, what you call shops where you go inside in San Francisco, there's no one actually there. You can pick up whatever you want and you come back. Everything is paid through your online and everything as well. So there's this development happening there, but definitely we are not quite there to the Terminator or Matrix level. But these advances are must if you want to, like, you know, make easy, you know, in your life to things like self-driving cars like that.
So for businesses online tonight that are thinking, you know, that you know, machine learning might be part of what they're doing at some point in the next few years, I think, you know, one of the important things to remember is the L part of ML, which is learning. And even in that example that we just gave, that you know, telling a machine, this is a cat, this is a dog, off you go, give me some insight, where it starts learning certain things about it. If you take that right back to the start, if we had told the machine that a cat was a dog and a dog was a cat, what we get at the final end of that learning process is obviously very skewed. So I think what's going to be very important for businesses even today, and as they wake up tomorrow and they sort of consider, well, what should I be looking at to get ready for these new technologies? There's a big thing that we talk about called data integrity, which is really ensuring that the data that you're collecting is actually accurate and is valuable in some way that can be shared with something like, machine learning, so that it can start to extract those insights out and give you a better understanding of what's going on. Would you say the same, PD, in terms of if a company was to come to you today and say, I'm looking at maybe moving into this world of machine learning to get some better insights, would you sort of start at that data point with them?
Yeah, 100%. The capturing data and the structural data is one of the key points, because there could be millions of billions of data, but if it's not structured and if it doesn't have it captured properly, that's not useful. So probably if you're thinking to go down that path, it would be definitely understanding how to capture the data. So similar to the sustainable, blockchain example before, in the machine learning for a small business, I will give you an example which experiment now is turning into a workpiece becoming. This retailer, large retailer in Australia, wanted to, when they purchase stuff, because as you know, every shop has a very limited space, so they have to work it out, what are the things I'm going to keep display on this shop. And the idea of is to being able to rapidly move these items. You don't want to buy stock and hold for a very long time. So when the merchants probably buy these things, how much of informed decision they can make by looking at a T-shirt, for example, is it a V-neck shirt? What's the color of shirt? What's the made? Is it 100 cotton or synthetic? And look it up from his previous, the kind of records to see, have we sold these kind of T-shirts before? And if we sold it, what was the turnaround time for these kind of things? And if you don't have it, what else, outside there, if you look at Amazon or someone like a big shopping cart, have they had much of sales? So that way you make informed decisions. So when you're buying that kind of inventory, you pick up inventory that has a high probability of selling faster than the others, right? So which we did probably 6 months ago. Now during the Christmas time, now they want to look at that into the whole subset of other things they're selling in their store. So which is very important. Ideally, you don't want to hang around and keep stuff that which is not selling for 2 years, then mark these downs for 50% off and sell with either at a less profit or at a loss.
Beautifully put. I want to make sure that we dedicate a bit of time for Industry 4.0. And the reason for that is, as you know, PD, Industry 4.0 actually captures a number of different tech pieces under that definition. So there's probably a little bit more to unpack on that. When we talk Industry 4.0 at a very sort of high level, we're looking at it as the next big industrial era that we're stepping into, and Industry 4.0 being the impact that this is going to have on workplaces, whether it be manufacturing, better use of robots, etc. That may be, for example, education, and better using information there. So Industry 4.0 is going to touch a number of different areas, retail, hospitality, medical as well. So I wouldn't mind unpacking a little bit more around this sort of world of IoT and robotics and the like. But again, I'm going to put everyone on the same page by sharing a 2-minute video, and then maybe just come back to you, PD, with some thoughts. Oops, it's not the video. Take 2.
And what does it mean for you? Technology is driving change across all areas of society. Not only do we increasingly use it, and even rely on it in our personal lives, we also find our workplaces digitally evolving, with more and more processes now being undertaken using technology. This change is known as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 will see many tasks that were once performed by us now being automated. With the collection and analysis of real-time data, artificial intelligence, and the ability for all components of a production line to talk to each other, production can be really efficient and personalized according to customer needs. But what does this mean for us? With increased automation, our time will be freed up for concentrating on more complex tasks. We will need a workforce who are capable of building, programming and developing these technologies, but also making sure we are applying them to our lives in an ethical way. There are core skills that we can offer that technology cannot replace. The human touch is going to be incredibly important, ensuring effective communication, problem solving and supporting change management in this digital environment. There will also be a greater need for joint working across the job market with an open mind to explore the unknown future possibilities. We will all need to develop our skills in order to embrace, adapt to this ever-changing environment. What will you do to make sure you are ready and have the right skills to thrive in the Fourth Industrial Revolution?
Now, PD, I know in my life before what I'm doing at the moment, working in the world of tech, inevitably almost every dinner party, when somebody sort of finds out what you do, someone would bring up to me this idea around, all of our jobs are going to get replaced by robots, and none of us are going to have work anymore, and what does this all mean, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And I think I'd remind people always of just the one core thing to remember, which is stage one of what this Industry 4.0 looks like when we talk about automation within the workplace, is that we're going to look at replacing the three big Ds, which are the dull jobs, the dirty jobs, and the
dangerous.
Thank you. And so the three jobs there really that nobody wants is effectively what we're going to be looking at as the first phase of this automation piece. And we're seeing that with things like diffusing bombs, sending robots into mines, areas like that, to that first phase that we saw in the last decade. As we're now looking at very sort of monotonous tasks that can get replaced over with part of this technology, things like just checking the maintenance of machines and consumables, hooking that back up to an IoT type system. So really a lot of these functions that can be easily replaced are centered around one of those three key areas. And we'll touch in a moment maybe about some of the additional skills that are more valued in this time of robotics and the like coming through. But just on that piece of kind of Industry 4.0, and I know that you guys at Asia Pacific Tech sort of do some work there across IoT and a few other areas as well. What sort of impact are you seeing on businesses in this conversation?
Sure. I mean, let's start with Industry 1.0, where the water and steam engine, the Industry 2.0, where the steel and electricity came in, Industry 3.0, where we got the electronics and computer technology and automation, and the fourth industry, which we can looking at from a holistic view, like trying to connect all these things together. I had the opportunity, a few years back, to go to Colorado to watch the Amazon, one of their biggest warehouses. When I walked in, I could actually, it's like, size of Dandenong, like it's a huge place, and all I saw was machine moving, there was very minimal people working on the floor. So I think with the Industry 4.0, it's a matter of getting all these technologies put together. So for example, if a forklift can go, what's the optimal way the forklift can go and pick up this particular pallet in a large size of warehouse like that. So that's where the Industry 4.0 will be playing a key role. So you, like you said, it's the dirty jobs, dangerous jobs, things like that, like, you know, people don't want to do, or the risky, you can get the robots to do it. But for robots to do it, we have to design it from the get-go. So if you had to, like, you know, convert existing warehouse to a smart factory, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of money. Whereas if you decide to build a warehouse from the scratch, and if you think about all these points, like, you know, where the sales is going to be, how we can, like, you know, design it, like, you know, to get the optimal value of it. So you trying to get the unit cost to a very minimal way. A good example, I don't know whether I remember telling you, Chris, we worked with this packaging manufacturer in Australia. As you know, the manufacturing jobs keep going out of the country because the labor cost going up and every day, right? Whereas these guys, like, you know, have done a lot of automation in their factories and their packaging. They export packaging solution to China. Even though, like, you know, the Asian markets, like, you know, where you think the labor force is still, you know, value is the cost is much, you know, low compared to Western world. But through this robotics, through this Industry 4.0, they were able to achieve a unit cost rate where the developing or the Asian countries couldn't match up from the resource, from the labor wise. So that's kind of like, you know, movement, like, you know, so happening, like, you know, I think that's why it's really important for Australia, or even in the city of KZK, embrace the industrial 4.0, because they have this opportunity, like a unique opportunity, like, you know, bring back all these manufacturing jobs back to Australia, rather than, like, you know, exporting in the what you call material resource level.
And I think, you know, again, you can't have a conversation around what this looks like as a business without sort of identifying that, I guess, that seismic shift that's going to happen in the kind of skills that we need as people. So I think it's worth sort of just recognizing in that you know, it's kind of a belief of mine that you know, we need to start changing the way that we're even teaching in schools right now in regards to flexibility and adaptability, because undoubtedly what's happening here is that the jobs that we traditionally saw in the past as good opportunities are the ones that are starting to be replaced over at this level. So soft skills become so much more important. You know, things like that is an area that, you know, for now at least, you know, artificial intelligence isn't about emotional intelligence. We're not trying to sort of humanize computers to a point where they can replace that level of soft skill knowledge. But I think on the flip side is, if you're a business and you're providing services to business, I think it's worth sitting back and saying, well, could I potentially be impacted by some of these changes here? And you know, I had an interesting conversation with my nephew, and he's sort of an accountant, and he was saying, oh, that'd be one of the last jobs. And I said to him, when you think about it, really, there's a lot of automatic processes behind some of the work that you're doing, and you know, you start to unpack the actual functions of what you're doing in a role, and you can see very quickly where a computer may be able to actually do that the same, if not in some cases better. So I think, you know, as far as impact of businesses go, we talk about that monumental shift with, you know, Kodak missing out on digital cameras and taxi industry missing out on the opportunities there with Uber. I think this is one of those areas that people are still coming up with business ideas that are really providing solutions that could potentially fit better within something like an Industry 4.0 model, or computers and robots doing a similar thing. So seems like a foreign idea, and we're looking into the future, but this is not too far in the future that a lot of these functions and roles are happening. So I think as a business, it's very difficult to look at it and say, well, do I just throw my arms up in the air and say, well, all this is over, I may as well make some money while I can and then learn another skill later? Or should I embrace how I would actually use this stuff? What would your advice be to a business that's coming in a little bit concerned about the this area of what it could all offer, but also wanting to embrace the idea?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like, you know, people, you know, the robots never gonna take our job. I think that what they're gonna do is make our jobs better. Like, you know, so, you know, we can be involved in more simulating brain kind of like activities, you know, where we'll be taking different kind of like approach. So if you're thinking your, you know, industry is gonna or your business gonna be impacted, you don't have to be a big player to to make differences, right? Having, I mean, sensors 5-6 years ago they were costing you 22, I don't know, $50. Now there's sensors you can buy under $1, right? So sensors, and all these devices, the price of them continue to go down. All you have to do is experiment, right? To see whether if it's going to work or not. If it doesn't work, you can move on. So one of the key thing in the innovation industry is fail fast, fail cheaply. So once you have heard of these emerging technologies, yes, you don't have to jump on and tomorrow do change your business to 360. But then if you have the idea, small ideas, you can start playing on it, prototyping it, experimenting it to see whether these kind of technology can give you the competitive advantage or creative the what you call more income, or the reduce the complexity within your business so you can cut down your costs. So that's the way I would look at these all changes with the technology. If it's if it's working for one of those categories, I will definitely consider experimenting it.
I think again, with IoT being a piece around this discussion that we're having at the moment, for those on the call who may be not so tech-minded, when we talk IoT, we're talking Internet of Things. Internet of Things really, in its most simplest explanation, are things that hear and things that do. So when we talk about things that hear, we're talking about sensors and actuators. So sensors are the things that will listen to what's going on, pick up, read data, in some way give you an understanding of what's going on. And on the actuator side of the puzzle, you're talking about things that will do stuff. So that might be relay mechanisms, that might be any amount of solutions that fit there. But generally speaking, IoT sits within those areas of sensing technologies and actuator technologies. And a lot of us are already familiar with those technologies within our own homes. Nest thermostats, for example, sensing the temperature and then actually turning it on based on, that we don't have to physically go in and then change all those settings. Just about anything that's an IoT device or connected to the internet is offering that ability to be able to both sense and do in some way or form. It's also another interesting conversation that's happening behind all this, which is the Internet of Behavior, which is sort of that next level of technology influencing behavior. So picking up on the patterns we're doing, we're all familiar with the idea, shopping for shoes. All of a sudden it pops up in my newsfeed, those same shoes that I was looking at that I didn't buy. Google's been tracking our behavior and motivations for a while now, but it's existed within this very closed world. I think when we start talking about the Internet of Behavior, where we're becoming a lot more connected, we're hooking up sensor devices to ourselves. The big tech companies are getting a better understanding of who we are, and what's happening there is the Internet of Behavior is them looking at how we can influence that behavior further, beyond just tracking you with, hey, you should really buy these shoes now because they're on special, possibly extending into other functions and roles. So now it's deviating a little bit off that Industry 4.0, but I think it's really interesting to kind of just look at what's happening in that area. Our understanding of processes has really come about off this idea of IoT and sensor devices, but now our understanding of people is going deeper, and our understanding of behaviors is going much deeper as well, built around exactly the same level of technology. So we're moving in some really interesting areas within that space, and I think it also opens up a lot of opportunities for companies as well. What would you say would be, because again, I know you've done through the work at Asia Pacific Tech, what would you say is probably the biggest thing that people are thinking with IoT in that space? When they come to you as a business, what are they considering doing?
Yeah, the two main things, Chris, I've seen is asset tracking and geofencing. So asset tracking is if you have high value equipments that you want to know where they are at any given time. It could be a hospital or it could be a construction company. So they try to attach these sensors to those devices or the machinery equipment and kind of look at it in a dashboard to understand where they are. And the second part of that is geofencing, for example, not just to attach a geo sensor to it, but also it can tell you which border it should be aligned with. For example, just say if you have a fleet of 200 cars, in the night it all sits on like a particular place, and it's within the I don't know 1 acre area or something. The moment it goes out of it, it knows that this is not supposed to go, so that can send you notification, kind of things like that. So it's kind of like you create a digital fence around it, to say this is where it should supposed to be. The moment it moves from that place to another place, you get notification or alerts, kind of thing. So probably the asset tracking and the geofencing are the 2 main things that we have experienced and we have helped with the businesses, and also the condition-based monitoring. Like, for example, not every equipment can be like what you call tested or looked at by machine every day, but you having like some sort of sensors in those machines, you can understand probably the heat it creates it, and you can work it out if it's creating overheat, like this need to be repaired, or something need to be looked at it. So you kind of like actively looking at those kind of machines proactively rather than reactive. Those are the probably 3 things I can think of Industry 4.0, Chris.
Perfect. I spoke to the non-tech people before, just in closing this one out so we can touch on the final topic. For the tech people on the line, I noticed Bodine in the background nodding and holding up a little dev board. I think it's worth that this is where some of these ideas start. When we talk Industry 4.0, it's easy for us to think robots, machines, big factories the sizes of Dandenong and what they're talking to look like. But for the tech guys, there's a world of opportunity there to explore solutions that can fit in underneath with the use of these very simple dev boards. So I know that's Bodine's little toy there that he tinkers around with, and I know a lot of the tech guys love to to kind of work on solutions there. But this is where it all begins, vision to version. What could this be? What would this look like? What does this thing do? That's where all of these ideas have started at some point. So there's a lot of opportunity to explore in that space if you're technically inclined to play. I want to make sure that we're allowing enough time, and guys, once again, thank you. I know this is a big stretch for a Wednesday night, taking you through the runway of your hump day, but we'll look at wrapping this up before 9 o'clock, and I just want to touch on a few key things before we finish up. But one final one that I thought was worth having a look at is the area of mixed reality. And so some of you may be familiar with the term virtual reality, augmented reality, what's happening within that space. Mixed reality is kind of this new term that's being thrown around, or XR as well, extended reality. But I thought, let's watch a final video, again, 2 minutes long, get us on the same page of what this technology is. And then I'll have a chat with PD around some of the use cases that we're seeing at the moment of this amazing new world we're about to step into.
Connection is a spark that gives our lives meaning. It drives us to seek out others who feel the same way.
Okay, why don't you input the data and we'll take a look together. Hey Mari, what you got for me?
To find those who share our views, yet offer different perspectives.
Saw this net. Look over here.
Challenge us with new ways of seeing.
That I think we should
deepen our understanding. And enrich our lives.
最后一笔的时候，往前。
Great things happen when we commit to something bigger than ourselves.
Take a closer look at it.
Place this here. Let's see how we go from there, okay?
This sense of collaboration and the feelings of connection it brings excites us.
Hey, just in time. I'm gonna move it slightly, okay?
It's yours, take it.
We have 2 planes right now on the same trajectory.
As we put people first, technology fades into the background and feels like anything but.
Aisha, what do you think?
I think if we had 330, maintaining 2800, we'll be clear for approach.
Excellent.
This changes the way we see the world, and in turn, changes the world we see.
These numbers are looking great, actually.
There's promise in the possibilities. And what we see and create next will stretch the imagination.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Hello.
A world without boundaries.
Good job. A lot better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Slowly bring
A world where technology enhances, not limits, humanity. With people front, center, and in the spotlight. The future is here. And here can be anywhere. Introducing Microsoft Mesh.
This for me right now is probably one of the most exciting areas of opportunity. And I'm just closing this over. And I say that coming off the back of an experience only a couple of weeks. Many of you might be familiar.
You're breaking out, Chris.
Yes.
Slow, but getting better. Yeah, better. Yeah.
Spirit fingers, check.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. No, I was just going to share, this is coming off an experience a couple of weeks ago. Many of you be familiar with the Burning Man festival over in the US, and you know, this sensational rite of passage for tech guys and creative guys, and you know, this space where everyone goes and you know, have free reign, free love, and all things that's sitting underneath. But this this pandemic obviously had a big impact on something like physical events, and something like that seems so obvious that there's really not much room to move in regards to what that experience offers. In regards to a whole bunch of people getting together in a closed space, it just wasn't going to happen through restrictions and lockdowns. They reached out to the art community for full support in getting a platform together, and they created what they called the Dusty Multiverse. And what the Dusty Multiverse was basically somewhere for people around the globe to be able to log into and effectively be in the desert through virtual reality. You could fly over the desert, you could zone in on tents, drop in on tents, and there was live DJs playing in these tents. You would enter these tents wearing avatar clothing, and Dheeren touched on earlier about NFTs and sort of this space around, you know, intangible assets and what they're worth. You know, people who had normally spent thousands of dollars on outfits to go to Burning Man were happy to actually spend a lot of money on these digital outfits to express their identity online as well. So what we had here was a space where 80,000 people were able to collectively get together with live DJs in an environment where they could express themselves collectively together. And the platform itself, at first they felt bad about asking for ticket pricing, because they thought, well, people know there's so much cost associated with having a venue. How can we do that in the digital space? That's a big conversation right now when people talk about digital conferences and the like. How do you actually monetize those if people don't see the value? The great thing that comes out of this story is that they just simply had a donation system. Pay what you think the experience is worth. And they almost matched the amount of revenue after you factor in all expenses of hosting an event, the same amount of profit as what they would get out of running the event, they actually replicated in the digital world. So what they've taken there is some of the key things we've talked about tonight: NFT, blockchain, all of these spaces around there. But by creating that as the central piece within the multiverse, which is really around virtual reality, they created value and experience that allowed people to be able to join through. That's at the fun side, yeah. And when I was talking to PD about this the other day, and said to him, in all honesty, it was glitchy. It's first time round, and it's still relatively new with that amount of people online. But undoubtedly, the impact that this is going to have in some of these traditional industries in regards to overlay video and augmented reality, I think we can start to see some of these areas. PD, what excites you opportunity-wise the most within this area of mixed reality?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. One of the key ones I've seen and I've used is the IKEA app. I'm not sure whether you have used it, where you can use a camera and point to a corner of your house, and you can select sofas or wardrobes that you buy. So you kind of work it out whether that's going to match to the interior that you already have, the paint colors and things like that. So if you're in a furniture business or ornament business, that's something easily can be done. So all you do is just get your your access to your camera, and from there onwards you can pick up all the ones you're planning to buy and see if it's gonna fit for that that room and all the color palette and everything. That's the one part of it. And again, I've seen used in troubleshooting a lot, especially Telstra use that. As you know, Telstra have their facilities in all parts of the world, and you can't have experts in the industry in the remote places. So all they do is they have similar to a Google Glass kind of thing. They look at the wire board or the circuit boards, and behind the team sits at and look at the same problem, right? And they can say, oh, this is where the problems are, things like that. So I see a troubleshooting this going to play a huge role in infrastructure kind of world, especially telco to electrical, even plumbing. I think we spoke about that before, Chris. Being able to look at the layout of the plumbing the moment you walk into a place gives a lot of information, and I can see the mixed reality playing a role there. Even though the Asia Pacific tech doesn't really do much on this space. But it's definitely exciting space if you have the right tools.
I would recommend anyone who's got a phone nearby download an app called Jigspace. If you want to get a better understanding of what this stuff could be and what it might mean. Jigspace is a fantastic story. Actually got funded by Startmate, a Sydney firm. And they're doing some great things around that whole space of digital overlay with the world. But the great thing, which I think is really clever, is that you can download the app and access a whole bunch of free things to be able to play around with. So worth having a look at. It will do that spatial recognition. So hold it up, it identifies a flat surface. You can then have things like a lightsaber that'll actually position on the table. You can move it around, unpack it all, look at all the pieces and the parts and how a lightsaber actually works. Well, according to the canon stories and the diehard fans, but yeah, you can literally break apart all of these objects and see it all in real time, in real space. So a great way just to interact and experience what that could all be about. A lot of us would be familiar with the kids running around with Pokemon. I just saw Louis with your Star Wars. Nice, you're a fan. But yeah, I think a lot of us saw the kids running around with Pokemon Go, and this idea of everyone's pulling out the Star Wars now. So Pokemon Go being this sort of idea of gamification inside of this idea of augmented reality, where you could collect things around and monsters and animals. You look at the next phase on that. I know there's companies out there, for example, right now that allow you to hold up a phone and identify like what goods can be recycled. And it will use image recognition, which is backed by machine learning with augmented reality, to be able to identify, mix and pop up on the screen to kind of indicate where that should go. this is an area that I think, until we separate from this device, seems like it's got a lot of potential, but we still get anchored back to this idea of a screen. The exciting news for anyone following this space is that just over 10 days ago, Facebook announced and released, and Australia was one of the first launch countries, their first smart glasses, and that was through a partnership with Ray-Bans. Now, this first generation of smart glass for them is essentially just replacing some of the functions and features of this device. So what it has is the audio features on there, the ability to be able to record both video and picture, and nothing is extended into the lens itself. It's purely technology built into the frame. But they have very clearly indicated that this is Gen 1. Gen 2, they'll start to explore some of the idea of overlay onto lens with some basic information and data coming through. And then as they move into Gen 3, Gen 4, we'll start to have full interaction in through lenses with our full interaction with the world. So this space blows my mind when we think about the opportunity that's there. Another conversation that PD and I were having was the importance, and all the startups on the line that I work with would know that I preach this one regularly, but what can make or break a startup is position and timing. How you position yourself in the market and your timing of what you're doing. And Google Glass was actually one of the first to enter this area, but Google Glass literally failed because they were just way too early. People weren't ready for that idea. I think Facebook now has entered in just at the right time, and I think we're going to see this space open up massively over the next few years. When you start seeing this in the workplace, where it's got the ability to be able to read emotions of people, get an understanding that you know what they're doing, and you can actually see how long they've been in the office for, get a read of information. You know, obviously there's privacy stuff that sits in underneath. You know, how do you control your digital footprint? What does that all look like? There's a massive amount of discussion around this space, but effectively what we're talking about here is technology that will be effectively no longer requiring us to be one step removed through the screen. And that's what extended reality and this space is really about, is once you bring it into the workplace, then a mechanic can open up a car, see a motor, and actually have animations in regards to where to turn things, where to fill things up, where to you know, access things on the car. This is the area that's really going to explode over the next few years. And I noticed a couple of you are looking at your phones and moving them around, so I'm assuming you probably downloaded that Jig Space. It's cool, yeah, like it's really cool. And it's purely just a, in the scheme of things, what you're looking at there is like me showing you an iPod for the first time. Yeah, we look back on that now and just think, come on, that's you know, that's not this. Yeah, how was that even a thing? But I think what you're looking at there, as exciting as that is, fast forward 10 years and imagine how we're going to interact with the world. This space is going to change massively.
Yeah. Adding one more thing to what you're saying, Chris, I think the pandemic really accelerated the mixed reality, because you can't be in the physically in most of these stores. How do you can get the same kind of experience in a virtual online way, right? So definitely sky's the limit. Yeah.
And I noticed too that I believe Platypus has just signed up for it as well. So I don't know whether you guys know the the shoe retailer, but Platypus has got it, and they're wanting to do it as an experience to bring people back into the store. But you can actually try on shoes just by holding up your phone, identifying the shoe, and then holding it down to your feet. It'll measure your feet, and you can walk around the store and actually see the shoes and what they look like. Now, they want to bring people in the stores, so they're going to offer that as an experience in store. There's no reason why you can't do that online though at home. So, you know, think through these industries that will change once you've got an experience like that. And we talk about the death of sort of bricks and mortar stores, but part of our conversation when we were talking about e-commerce was the opportunity there for a hybrid type environment where you're creating an online experience using technology, but then giving that experience in store where people can still go along. Big ticket items, people will still want that. As much as I can pretend I'm driving a Ferrari, I'm not about to click $450,000 and get it delivered the next day. That's not going to happen anytime soon. Although, yeah, if this is being recorded, they'll play that back in 20 years and have a chuckle. But I think there's certain things that are just not going to move there. But the reality is that commodity-based experiences are really turning online. So yeah, enjoy playing with the JIC tonight. I know my kids had a ball with that, learning how turbine engines work and a whole bunch of different things. So, PD, I want to make sure that we stick to the timing. And before closing out, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on just those pieces of tech. I guess what I want to make sure that everyone leaves with tonight is strategy. So what do we do as a business? So we kind of look at it and think, wow, that's cool. That's potentially dangerous for what I'm doing. How do I embrace all this tech? And I guess, the starting point really should be, how do we come up with a strategy? How do we come up with a plan? Again, I'm probably also looking to you here to give a good pitch on the work that you do as Asia Pacific Tech, because that's exactly what you do with clients coming to you. But what would that typical, customer journey look like? How do they even start with these kind of chats?
Yeah, I think I have to be realistic here as well. Most of the people come with either problem or opportunity that they think will, for example, if it's a problem they have tried using existing technology hasn't worked, or they want to solve it differently, or they see this opportunity to attract get the computer advantage over their computers. So they come and speak to us. Then what we do is we try to do a workshop just to understand a little bit more about the problem. Actually, not a little bit about actually the full detail of the problem, because we might know the technology, how it plays out, but ultimately you're the guys who actually running the business, understanding the competition and everything else, right? So we trying to come up with this fancy solution that no one can use. It's no good for anyone, right? So what we'll probably do is once after that workshop, we will try to do a prototype, the fast prototype, going back to the same thing I mentioned earlier. Fail fast, fails cheap, right? So that way we can work it out what's worked for your business. After iterations, we'll have a good idea if that works or not, right? Not every prototype is going to work up and end up being a project or a business idea. So similar to for that, if you guys think of something, I would say try to understand problem, write it down on a piece of paper, talk to people, and then test it out to see if it's worked. And if it works, and if you work it out, okay, this is how much you're going to spending, just say 100,000 or whatever. And if it doesn't give you the benefit out of it, in the next 5 years or whatever, the return of investment, those all need to be factored in. Then you engage with the business or IT provider to develop that idea. So that's what we've been doing. So we have customers ranging from medium-sized businesses to enterprises, large enterprises, and also government institution. But I don't think anyone should think all these technologies are there only for the bigger business. It's just a matter of you don't have to build a solution scale which is $1 million kind of ideas, but you can tweak here and there in your current process model and can give a high value to your customers. Those are the ones I would pick when I'm building a strategy.
Nice. One of the things I'm going to suggest to everyone online tonight who has a business and is looking at some of these technology pieces, I'll throw this together very quickly tonight and send it through. But if you were to do a table where you look at now, next, and long, and you look at the 4 technologies we looked at tonight. So when we look at now, next, long, and say you're looking at something like what we're talking about here, mixed reality, what would that mean now for my business? How would I use that currently with what's available and what kind of solutions I might need to provide? And then give some consideration for next. So look at next being that time frame of, in the next, say, 5 years, what could that be for my business? and long, let yourself dream. Yeah, look at what that technology is and think, wouldn't it be really cool if we did that? That's where your BHAGs come from. Yeah, your big, hairy, audacious goals, and that dream big, that vision piece. Put that on the long side for now, but look at now, next long across the core tech, and just say, what impact would it have on my business, and how could I potentially embrace it? If you can answer those questions, and then step away from it, and remember, never do tech for the sake of doing tech. It's the wrong tech strategy to have. Yes, there's so many super cool things that you can do, but at the end of the day, as PD pointed out, it's people and problems first. So cool tech is fantastic to talk about, has so much potential, and will dramatically change your business. You shouldn't sit back and ignore it, but nor should you race out to just make all these investments in things without a clear strategy in place. So now, next long, look at core tech. How would it impact your business, and how could you embrace some of these solutions? And then, thank goodness we've got local clever little buggers like PD, who we can go to and say, how do I do that? What do I do here to make that happen? So there's an opportunity there for that. I just want to close out because I'm mindful of time, and I'm sort of very strict on these things to make sure that we get it through. I just want to remind everyone that tonight's session was recorded. I noticed that in the chat earlier. A link will be sent to you as a follow-up to this. However, all of the previous sessions, along with this session, will be available on our Backing Business in Casey website. So you can jump on there at any time, check it out. Also watch all of the previous sessions along with all the attachments and links from those, and this will be available at the same place as well. So I'm clicking enter on this and hoping that this comes through to you. I'm asking if you could please open that link. This is a feedback form. And so important for us to get feedback off these sessions. It's what allows us to be able to get time commitment from people like PD and Dheeren to be able to join us for these sessions outside of hours, because we really can offer the most amount of value. So the link there will allow you, if you open it up now, fill in the survey afterwards if you need to, but shouldn't take any more than 2 minutes. Just to fill out a couple of things on there. It would be fantastic if you could share that. In regards to overall what we're doing as economic development, I always remind people that this is just conversation, insight, motivation. It's really about, I guess, unpacking a lot of these questions that we get asked on a regular basis. But ultimately, at the end of the day, sometimes you just want to talk to someone and break down strategy and work out what to do. We're available there for that, and I would encourage anyone on the line tonight, if you just want to spitball with somebody,